So to understand the shapes of molecules, there are several different theories that we can use. And we'll start with sort of the simplest theory that does quite a good job at describing the shapes of many small molecules. And this is what's called valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. Oh, I spelled theory wrong. There's an O there. Or Vesper. Of course, the vowel isn't quite in the right place, but we still pronounce it Vesper. So let's break down what this name means and how it's going to affect how we understand the shapes of molecules. Okay, so valence shell, let's start there. Valence shell, this just means we're talking about the valence electrons in a molecule. And this will match up with what we think about with Lewis structures too. Lewis structures also just consider the valence shell electrons in a molecule, right? We don't think about the core electrons, we ignore those, we only look at the valence electrons. Same is going to be true here for this theory as we're thinking about the shapes of molecules. Okay, electron pairs, well, there are two different types of electron pairs that we can have, and this assumes we're not going to be looking at free radicals that have an odd number of electrons where you don't have pairs. But anyway, electron pairs can be either bonding electrons, so those come in pairs, or they can be lone pairs. Right, that's also a type of electron pair. So both bonding electrons and lone pair electrons come in pairs, and we can think about them sort of behaving as a group. And then repulsion, the fact that electrons don't like each other, or to be more scientific about it, electrons repel each other. Right, so because they're both negatively charged, they don't want to be near each other. The energetics push them away from each other. So the idea here is that if we're thinking about a central atom and it has bonds around it as well as lone pair electrons, those are going to repel each other. And the molecule is going to arrange itself such that those repulsions are as small as possible. So basically you try and get the electrons as far apart as they can get from each other. So that is the idea behind valence shell electron pair repulsion theory. We're thinking about the lone pairs and the bonding electrons in a molecule, and we're thinking about how do we make it so that they can push each other as far away from each other as possible. We want those electrons, the electrons don't want to be near each other. And so we find the geometries that minimize those repulsions. Okay, so as we're thinking about valence shell electron pair repulsion theory, there are two types of geometries that we will be considering. And I just want to start this video talking about that idea before we then jump into what specific types of geometries what some specific geometries we're looking at. So first, we can talk about the electron pair geometry. All right, and this is the geometry that defines all of the electron pairs. So if we're thinking about a central atom, this is the geometry that will describe how all of the electron pairs, and when I say all, what I mean here is it applies to both the bonding and the lone pairs. So in the electron pair geometry, we're thinking specifically about the lone pairs as well and treating them sort of similar to how we treat the bonding electrons. So that is the electron pair geometry. This will make more sense once we look at some actual chemical structures. But just want to define this first so then we can use these terms as we're talking about those specific structures. And then what we're usually actually interested in is number two, which is sometimes these are the same thing, sometimes they're not, which is the molecular geometry. This is what we care about. And this is the geometry or the shape of the atoms in the molecule. And so if we're thinking about this in terms of electron pairs, essentially you're kind of only worrying about the bonding electrons. The lone pairs matter and they change the shape, but you sort of ignore them when you're thinking about what is the actual shape of the atoms in the molecule. Because of course an atom behaves very differently than just an electron pair. A lone pair is not an actual, there's no nucleus there, right? So we usually just care about where are the actual atoms. The lone pairs matter, and they will the fact that if there are any lone pairs present, they will affect the molecular geometry, but this is our way of sort of differentiating here. Like this is usually what we care about, but we'll sort of start. So this will be like our starting point, and then we'll think about, okay, once we consider that electron pair geometry, what does that mean for the actual molecular geometry? So there will be some circumstances where these are the same, and essentially these will be the same if there are no lone pairs. But once we have lone pairs, the electron pair geometry and the molecular geometry will be different. Okay, so that's the idea here, that we have different geometries, whether considering just the including the lone pairs or not including the lone pairs, and thinking about just the atoms. So kind of theoretical at this point. Let's jump in the next video. We'll jump into looking at some specific examples of what these geometries look like, and differentiating between electron pair and molecular geometries.